Welcome to Unbox Your World, the podcast where philosophy meets tech. In each episode, we're connecting the dots between philosophy, technology, society, science, and progressive thought. And together with brilliant minds across the world who dare to challenge the way we think and live in today's society, we are unboxing our minds one episode at a time. I am Maria Salting. I am a tech professional during the day and a philosopher at night. So let's get started. Let's unbox ourselves. Welcome to the show. Is there a way to build technology that can help us humans to build deeper and more meaningful relationships? Well, this is something that Nina Iordanova, who is an award-winning actor who turned into a tech startup founder, and Niloo Ravaei, an ex-filmmaker and a blockchain professional, set out as their mission to try to build. Both of them were tired of endless swiping, wondering if there was a way where technology could help us understand ourselves better, which is in fact the starting point to build better relationships. Because if we understand better how we see the world and how this affects our relationships, we can improve our communication and interactions with others, and we can learn, grow, and improve. So Nina and Niloo, who are both very passionate about understanding how humans work and how humans can better be brought together, they set out to build an AI matchmaker that works over SMS, which went into Techstars in 2019. So they built a personalized meditation app called HelloIris with technology that can gather surprisingly accurate insights about the user's personality using only 160 words free word text. Throughout the journey, they learned a thing or two about what makes humans connect and how to build bridges to help people find meaningful relationships. Then the pandemic hit, and they realized what people needed the most right now was community. So just before the launch of HelloIris, they actually pivoted into a community service to help people find like-minded people. And the service is called Good People. So after having built all of this advanced technology, they actually found the answer, going back to basics and building a community for people to find like they belong. And I actually resonate a lot with what Niloo and Nina are building. And you can really tell how genuinely interested and how much they care about helping people to find meaningful relationships, whether it is a love partner or just a friend. Technology has, in fact, helped us to simplify many things in our lives. But the one area where it is lagging behind is to help us to build true and meaningful relationships. But in the end, we have to start with ourselves. And Nina and Niloo have learned a lot along the way, and today they share how. So welcome Niloo Ravaei and Nina Iordanova to the show, founders of Good People. Did I get the names right?
You did it perfectly.
Okay, perfect. Welcome.
Thank you for having us. Yeah, pleasure to be here, Maria.
So I'm really excited to hear more about your story and all the learnings you've gathered along the way to build technology to help people connect. And I can really relate to a lot in your story. So yeah, I think this will be really, I'm looking forward to this conversation. So I think that maybe you want to just start off sharing your story. So you have been on a journey to help people to build better relationships and to connect with one another through technology. How have you done that? And what have you learned?
Yeah, so it's definitely been like a long and winding kind of 2 years. And I think in our own ways, Niloo and I have both been asking that kind of question and thinking about what does it mean to have better relationships? How much of that is you? How much of that is the other person? But our journey together really started 2 years ago when we met to build a dating app together. And so on my part, I just shut down my previous company and was looking around for like, do I start working somewhere now? Do I get my first job essentially at the age of 27, 28? Do I start another company? What's kind of the path forward for me? And having been through it for 3 years, I was like, the only way that I would do this is with a co-founder to work with. Like, I would not do this by myself. It's just so incredibly hard. And the only thing that I'm really interested in is building a dating app. And so, like, the entire time I'd been in tech and startups, nobody was talking about this. Nobody was like, how do people meet? And what are relationships? It was like, how do you make crops grow faster? And how do you, reduce the amount of carbon dioxide that's ruining the atmosphere? Like, it was much more big picture questions, less like soft kind of interpersonal ones. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll put it out there just to say that I kind of did my bit and, said to somebody that I'm interested in building a dating app. And if nothing comes of it, which I assume it won't, I'll just keep applying for jobs. And so at the time I was hosting this startup meetup in Toronto. And I just happened to say like, yeah, I shut down my company, looking to build a dating app with a co-founder. Anyway, I can help people with like blah, 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 whatever. And somebody that I'd never met before ended up coming up to me after the event and was like, hey, I actually know a friend who's working on a dating app and I feel like I should introduce you guys. I think you'd hit it off. I was like, oh, yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah, that sounds great. And then I'll let Niloo take it from what was going on.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I've been working in the blockchain industry for about 2 years-ish. And I was doing a lot of like blockchain education, teaching people about what the blockchain is and like kind of making a lot of that information accessible to people. And what was really interesting to me about that industry too was like kind of the human dynamic side of it, where it's kind of like you're building a society again from scratch. There's things like governance, there's things like building trust, all of these things of like how do people interact, like a lot of things like game theory and all that stuff. That was a lot of like the philosophical aspect of it, all that kind of thing. So I was really interested in that. And like that was, feeding the same question I had about like how do people connect, how does technology create that trust and that connection between people, right? So I was working in that industry, and then I had also like a few years ago been like, I want to like match people based on personalities, and I'm doing a research project, and I put it out there. And some girl that I known had like messaged me, and she was like, yeah, we should turn this into like a coin and then match people and have it be a dating app. Let's do this together. And so I was just kind of starting doing that as like a part-time project. And around the time when I got introduced to Nina, it was the point where the blockchain industry was like crashing. It was like the terrible crash, and like everyone was like losing their jobs left and right. Like, okay, well, what do I want to do next? And I thought, well, you know what, this, idea for this dating app is really kind of taking off, and I'm really finding that I'm interested in it and I want to do it full time. But the girl that I was working with was like, no, I just kind of want to do it as a side project. And like, maybe we can use your personality tools to like help people do better sales. And I was like, that's not the question that I care about solving. So it just felt like everything was kind of exploding. Like the industry was exploding, like my own company was exploding. And like, I was just thinking like, well, I'm probably not going to do this because I'm not going to have a co-founder. And that was the point where this, like my old boss, he just came out of nowhere and he was like, yeah, there's a woman. She wants to meet you. She's excited about the company. And like, I had nothing. I just had like a Facebook page that just had the title of it with like no information on it. And he was like, yeah, she needs more than a Facebook page. Do you have a website? Do you have an app? And I was like, I don't have anything. Don't talk to me. I don't want to do this. But he just kept pushing and he just kept pushing. And I think what the misunderstanding on my part is I didn't realize that like it was Nina and she was a potential co-founder. I thought like the way they phrased it was like a woman is interested in your company. And I thought it was like an investor or something. And I was like, I'm not ready for this. I don't like he just kept asking me about the company and I was like, oh yeah, it's fine. Let's talk about something else. But he really, really hounded until he got us to meet. And I think, yeah, it was pretty serendipitous once we did meet.
Well, have you thanked him for that, for being nagging on you?
He called him the OG matchmaker because he like made the best match. Yeah.
Nice. So I mean, so then like because you said you wanted to build a data, but you were like you wanted to build something very different to swiping, like the kind of the antidote to that. So how, like, what was your thinking? Like what did you base it on? Like how do people connect? Like how what are you basing kind of the algorithm, or what are you optimizing for, like when you try to matchmake people in that sense?
It's interesting because I guess like the way that I was thinking about, how do people connect was a lot more like based on kind of how you see the world and how you communicate. So if you think about like the idea of like love languages, but you take it further than that, right? So how do you respond to stress? How do you, what do you do when you're sad? What do you do? Like, how do you communicate, or like, what are the things that are important to you? And so the whole personality algorithm that we had was based around looking at the words that people use, and from that understanding, how do they see the world and what's important to them? And like, what are their values? Not at the level of like, I also want like, what are some like surface level that I got, I don't know. I mean, I feel like even anything I say, I'm like, oh, I'm a vegan or whatever, but I feel like those are all based on real values. But I feel like in a dating app, you just see a lot of like surface words, but everyone says, I love to travel. I love to do this. I love the office. Like, it doesn't feel like you're really getting a real sense of who this person is and whether or not you would actually connect if you met in person or had a conversation. So that was kind of what we were trying to replicate. And yeah, so our whole thing was based on, do you kind of see the world the same way, or can relate to the way that you both see the world? And if you are going to end up in conflict situations, do you instinctively kind of understand how the other person's react? Look, for example, if I go into conflict and I'm upset and I shut down, and you're somebody who needs to talk it out, and like you feel like me shutting down is like me rejecting you or something, like that creates a lot of conflict, and people can't really communicate in those moments, right? So it's like just knowing that like, oh, but if I also shut down and you also shut down, I kind of understand when you're upset what's going on, right? And it's just like I instinctively get that. So that was sort of the philosophy of like what we were basing it on.
So that's interesting. So really, you're saying then that the words is really that descriptive. You can really to say that much about person. Yeah.
So what was interesting is we experimented a lot with that. And at first we were thinking, do we just use like free form text? Do we use like, we take their Facebook posts or their tweets or something and try to like understand that? Do we just like get them right? Like, do we do multiple choice questions? We tried a lot of different things, and we actually honed it down to 3 questions that really kind of ended up giving us that template of like being able to detect those patterns in people. And the questions were, tell us a little bit about yourself and what's important to you. So this was just like a free form, like very broad. The second question was, tell us about how you experience and respond to conflict, and tell us about how you experience and respond to stress. And so what was really interesting was all of these questions were like pretty open-ended on purpose. And the point was, you could see what people saw as conflict or stress in their lives, right? So like one person would talk about like family, one person would talk about work, one person would talk about like authority, one person, and just by virtue of like what they instinctively see as conflict, you could see what is the important thing in their life, or like what they see as stress, see what is the important thing in their life. So it was like a lot of, it was a really, really interesting experiment to kind of see those results come in and start to see that you really could start to learn what somebody's about through just those 3 basic questions. And they weren't long at all. It was like 300 characters each.
Okay, so you're saying really that it's kind of an easier question to answer, like how do you respond to stress, and figuring out like the opposite to that is kind of what you value in life. Is that, do I interpret it correctly?
Not necessarily that like the opposite is what you value, but I think it shows you like how you see the world and like what's important, right? So for example, if I say, describe how you respond to conflict, and it's like, well, like one time when my boss did this thing and like whatever, and then this happened, and I did this, and I tried to talk it out with them, and whatever, and you kind of have that. It's sort of like, okay, I see that this person cares about, or like work is important to them, because if you don't give them any kind of, but if I ask everybody like, oh, tell us about a time in a romantic relationship that you had conflict. Everyone talk about the romantic relationship, right? But then when you don't give them that, it's like people just gravitate towards where their focus is, if that makes sense.
Interesting. So I mean, because you built a personalized meditation app called HelloIris, and this was quite a long project for you, right? So if I understand it correctly, you're building an app then based on this personality test to get daily meditation exercises to help you expand your worldview, I guess. Or like how does that work? That's like, what is that like? Why do you even need a personalized meditation app instead of going to Headspace or any others of those?
Yeah, so for us, the meditation really grew out of the dating app. And so for us, our goal with the dating app was, how can you have better relationships with other people? How can you meet the right people, or just have people that you're compatible with, not random people that's literally one in a million. And what we realized through that year of building the company was, it's not really about the other person. Like, if you don't know what you're looking for, if you don't know what's important to you, if you don't know what you're bringing to the relationship, you could meet 10 million people and still not find the right person. Yeah. And so that really made us think, like, is where we need to start, not with the match, not with providing you the perfect person, but with helping you understand yourself, and then giving you a way to bring that to all your relationships, whether it's professional, whether it's romantic, whether it's family, etc. And so for us, it was like, we have this technology that can understand how you see the world and what's important to you. So instead of using that to match you to other people based on your personality, let's match it to meditations that can help you see yourself better. Yeah. And so the difference between what we were building in Headspace was, if you've ever done Headspace or Calm or sort of any of those more classic meditation apps, it's more about the practice of meditation and clearing your head of thoughts and being with yourself and just sort of creating that space for yourself. And it's much more like visualization, imagine this golden light, pay attention to your breath, count to 10, start again, like this kind of practice. And for us, it was much more like Niloo was saying, so we know you're the kind of person that in a conflict tends to shut down. And if we know that somebody else tends to get really fiery or tends to dominate the conversation, then those are really two very different things. Like, you don't want to tell the person who's already prone to shutting down to be like, what makes you so loud? What makes you want to dominate? Like, that's not relevant to how I see the world. And so that was kind of our goal, to like really highlight your experience, so that one, the limiting beliefs that you just sort of see as objective truth and don't even realize like are your way of seeing the world. You just think that's how the world works. And then ways to start chipping away at that.
That's I can really relate to that. But what's so cool is that you actually built technology for that. I mean, it's I guess though that the people that. So how would you? I mean, I know that you have we're going to get to that. You've pivoted it to something else. But I think it's also, how would you, like, what was your plan to kind of market that? Like, this is meditation, but it will help you eventually find a romantic partner.
I don't think that was how we were marketing it. Yeah. I think it was more of a full kind of pivot, and we weren't, I mean, I think we were kind of thinking this was kind of more of a fantasy land and like never something that we concretely put into plan. But we were thinking like, oh, if we can create a community of people who are all willing to do this work on themselves, then that becomes a pool of people to pick matches from. Because one of the theories that I think for me was kind of disproven through the dating app process is, I don't think it's actually about finding someone who matches you, but but more so someone who's at the same level of kind of growth as you are, if that makes sense, right? So like it has the same level of kind of commitment. And I felt like for people, if you're kind of not doing any kind of personal growth and you're just like, this is the way that I see the world and I'm not going to change, and like, whatever, I am the way that I am. I think at that point, it matters that somebody matches the way you respond to stress, that somebody matches the way that you see conflict, because at that point, like, you're not really communicating and growing, and you're just kind of like, I'm this way, and I can only get along with other people who are also this way because they're the only people who can understand me. But But one of the things that we noticed was like, yeah, if you actually, and what was really interesting is a big part of that actually came from me and Nina's friendship, because it felt like, yeah, we're different people. And I think if we were to be matched in the way that the app originally designed us to be matched, we wouldn't be a match, right? But like we have very different personalities. But what was really cool is that we were both kind of, I don't know, had similar concerns or in the same place of like wanting to grow and change and wanting to, and having that awareness that, oh, my perspective is not reality. And therefore I'm curious about learning about your perspective too, and kind of coming to a middle ground together. So it felt like, okay, if we can kind of bring everyone together who believes that and sees that, and it's like, yeah, I'm trying to understand how I see reality. Where are my blind spots? Where are my limiting beliefs? And I can bring that same kind of curiosity and awareness that I bring to myself to the people that I meet, then that just creates the space where everyone's kind of on the same page. And even if you are kind of different in terms of like where your starting point is, you still can communicate and connect.
I love that. Yeah. So the meditation app would then be like a community of people interested in growing, and you would kind of match on the level of growth that you're at.
Kind of. And I don't think you would make it like a, like you've grown 10%.
Yeah, no.
In general, by virtue of being part of that community, it was like you self-select into, because I think in relationships, there's a lot of times where you kind of go in and it's like, I've done all this work. I'm trying to communicate well. I'm trying to hold myself accountable. And then you meet someone who's not willing or just isn't able to do that. And so you're like, well, it just feels like I'm doing all the emotional labor of this relationship and giving without getting anything back. And so that creates kind of an uneven balance. So we kind of thought like, yeah, this just gives everyone kind of has the same base assumptions coming into the community, and then any connections they have can just grow from there.
Nice. So what would you say? I mean, because I mean, you kind of found each other, like you connected. What would you say? What is it that makes human truly connect and feel that instant feeling of belonging, or the two of you feel like you truly connect, and that you like what was that feeling? What is it that kind of created that, like in your feeling or what way of you looking at it?
I think for me there was a pretty strong initial feeling of this is another person like me. I think that like having that feeling when you meet somebody, that sense of like not, and I feel like, with most people you have some level of commonality, but I felt like, at least in my experience, I hadn't really met a lot of other women who I thought were, not that they were not smart, but like more that I didn't find that they had the same level of depth in the way that they looked at the world or the questions they asked or things like that. And I felt like kind of pretty soon after meeting Nina, and I just remember like, I think I just went and looked at her Instagram after meeting her and stuff. And I just felt like I could just kind of sense like, okay, this is somebody who thinks about the world in similar ways, who also asks questions, who also, I don't know, trying their best to be the best person that they can be. And that felt like something like, oh, I recognize that. And I think that was probably the first kind of feeling of like, yep, I met somebody else who is like me. And I think that's probably what you need to kind of build the relationship on. And then I think in terms of what helped our friendship kind of grow and like feel like the connection was something that, you didn't tap out of it and like it continued to grow, was just like, I think her willingness to always want to kind of see me and where I was coming from. And I think seeing that, it also made me kind of feel like, oh, even though we're not the same in a lot of ways, or we have different perspectives, like that just feels more exciting because this is like an opportunity to learn about a different perspective and to kind of grow. When you kind of both brought that curiosity and openness and like no judgment of like, we both know what we're looking like. We both know that, we care about being the best person that we can be. And we know that we have blind spots. And so if there's anything going on, like, or even if you just have a difference of opinion, not even necessarily conflict, it just always was like a fun thing of like, oh man, like you're seeing it this way, like, oh cool, like I'm actually seeing it this completely other way. And like it just was, I think not only was it like, oh yeah, this is something we manage, but it just made the connection even more exciting because it wasn't like it wasn't as one dimensional to think like, oh, I only can get a lot of people who think the same way, and I just get confirmation on everything that I already think, but it doesn't give me that space to expand and grow. So yeah, those were kind of my feelings about what made our friendship really work. You have some thoughts?
Yeah, I think everything Niloo said, and then on top of that, I don't know, dimension of curiosity and being in, where it's like I like what I noticed about Niloo was not the sense of like I'm just stumbling through life and I did this thing and now I'm here and now this thing, and it was like, how can I'm trying to ask these questions. I'm trying to figure out like what is important to me, who are the people I want to be around, how can I do that, what is the work I want to put out into the world. And it was just the sense of like questioning everything, including yourself.
Yeah.
And so, and I think along that, a sense of curiosity where it's not just like, I don't know, you're digging for the answer just for the sake of getting to the right answer, but more as a way to connect.
Yeah.
And like to live a more connected and rich life. And I was like, oh, I think most people who do strive or even who try to be intentional, it's like, so that I can make more money, so that I can have this status, so that I can, it's kind of these objectives, not so much for the sake of like, oh, life is so rich and let me like dig in and I want to understand this. And this is also interesting. And what about you? Why do you think this way? And why do I think this way? And I think like that was just, it gave the space for our relationship and our friendship to deepen, where it was like, oh, there is the space for these questions to be asked. There's the curiosity for them to be answered and for that to be cool.
Yeah.
I recognize myself so much in what you're saying. So I think, so I mean, like then, so I mean, what you kind of wanted to do is you want to help others find the same friendships and relationships as you have found, and you have then instead tried, or not instead, but you have tried to build technology services to help people with that. What have you learned along the way, and what are the sources of inspiration that you've looked for in, finding the way to do this?
It's interesting. Yeah. I want to say, like, just going back to previous questions, and I think it leads well into this one, but I think if I had to put it into a single kind of sentence of like what actually makes people connect, it's the ability to kind of see and understand yourself and then to see and understand somebody else. And I feel like, that was kind of what we were trying to do with all the permutations of what we were building. The dating app was, how can we let you see somebody else they really are, so that you can connect to their essence. And then when we were doing the meditation app, it was like, okay, well, you can't really see somebody else if you haven't seen yourself first. You have that awareness about yourself. How can you bring that to somebody else? So it was like, oh, well, why don't you do these meditations and get to know yourself and get to see kind of who you really are at the deepest level. And I think what was really interesting was, at least in my perspective, I kind of come from a very like black and white scientific mind. And
Sorry, what?
Black and white kind of scientific.
Okay, yeah.
And I felt like, well, this is a question and it has an answer, and there is a way to do this. Is there an algorithm that makes people connect? Is there rules that people can follow? And so I think my entire drive to make this, to bring technology into the mix, was how can we just give people a tool that lets them do this easily and without any kind of like, because it's like, it's so hard to meet people. It's so hard to do that work on yourself. It's so hard to connect. Is there a tool that just makes that easy? And then I think through 2 years of experience, it was like, maybe that's just the point of being a human being, and you can't just take the essence of like being a human and being alive and like all the lessons and experiences that you and put it in a tool and be like, I clicked this button and I So I think that was in terms of what we learned. And that kind of leads us into kind of what good people ended up being. But we kind of learned while we were building the app, like I just kind of as a hobby started this kind of support group, kind of challenge called the COVID Love Chat. And it was basically for people who wanted to talk about or discuss, dating and relationships during COVID, kind of challenges, and kind of be there for each other and like share experiences or whatever. And that was just kind of something where I was like, yeah, I feel pretty kind of helpless that I'm stuck at home and I don't really feel like I go out or meet anybody anymore. I'm wondering if other people feel the same way and if they just want to be there for each other and like talk. And it just turned out like I went into the group with zero expectations, but 11 people joined it. And then we kind of met every week, and I just saw over 3 months like how the group kind of transformed and like how, relationships started to form, real friendships started to form. People were saying this is the best part of their week, and they're just like they haven't been able to feel so connected, in a virtual setting with like kind of strangers ever, right? Like 2 couples came out of it, and I was starting to see people like, the group kind of transformed from like, oh yeah, COVID sucks about this, or like my online dating is shitty like this. So that was kind of the first weeks. And then by the end, it was like, yeah, I'm starting to think maybe I need to take some time to myself and like look at my relationship with vulnerability because I feel like I'm not. And it just felt like all of those things that we were trying to force people to have with an app, like look at yourself, see that you have problems with vulnerability, connect with someone, this is who they are, like all of these things. It felt like, wow, like people instinctively know how to do that. And that is just the part of being a human being. The challenge is when you're kind of in these big metropolitan cities or you're going through the grind of life, you just don't have the opportunity to kind of have those spaces where you can do that. You don't have the spaces where you can connect with someone. You don't have those conversations that let you kind of look into yourself. So I think it just kind of shifted my mindset to think more about like, how can you give people the space where they can have those experiences rather than giving a technology that forces that experience on them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, the way I think about it is that you're creating like a safe space of the like-minded people that are in kind of the same mindset or phase, I guess, to explore and maybe dare to open up a bit more than maybe they would in another setting. Is that?
I think the nice thing is that everyone kind of shape their own experience. And so we cohorts, which are 3 months long, once a week meetings. And they're capacity people. So the groups are super small and they're always themed. So it's like, this is around a book club for women who run with the wolves, which is like a book on feminine spirituality. This is around habit building. This is around quantum physics. And so we try to structure the group so that they do facilitate connection beyond the whatever material. But I think if people are there to like, I want to make friends and I want to learn, I don't necessarily want to bare my soul and like share the things I'm going through right now. I think that's also like fine. It just creates that space. Like I can trust these people after I see them a couple of weeks and feel like friends, but you can kind of shape your own experience and what you take from it.
Yeah. And I would say that it's, it's not like, I think the closest experience is like when you're kind of younger and you kind of go to school and you go to university and you're kind of like in classes with people and you kind of all know the same people and you kind of have groups and you're doing all these things and you're doing projects together. And so it's kind of like you're sharing experiences and you're sharing a similar context that allows you to bond in a much more natural way. So right now, a lot of communities, that are built around like supporting and vulnerability and whatever, it kind of feels like you're going there and it's like, let's everyone be vulnerable now. Let's everyone share our deepest, darkest secrets and be here to support you. And it's just kind of like you're walking into the group and like that's the purpose of the group, but it doesn't feel like it's earned. So what we're really trying to do is like give people a way to share experiences together so that they can actually form deep friendships as adults, because that's really the challenge of making friends as a grown-up is like you just meet somebody and you're like, hey, I met you at a networking event. You're cool. All right, let's have a coffee. Okay. Hey, how's it going? We're having coffee. Nice to see you again. Catching up. 3 months later, we do the same thing. And it just feels like that relationship, you don't really get a chance to see somebody in different dimensions. You don't get a chance to like, have conflicts. You don't get a chance to do all these things that actually help you bond with someone. And that was one of the things that we realized through our friendship as well, because, as much as I told you, like, oh, I really liked Nina and I saw her Instagram and I felt, all of those things. But for sure, if we weren't building a company together, that friendship wouldn't have gone beyond the kind of acquaintanceship of like, hey, how are you doing? Let's catch up. And it just never would have, because we wouldn't have the opportunity to connect, right? And I think that's kind of what we're trying to do. And then people can make whatever connections they need or whatever they want to get out of it. That can be on them.
Cool. So we kind of drifted into good people, but so to summarize, so you built the personalized meditation app HelloIris, which pivoted into good people. Do you just want to, for the listeners, give like the elevator pitch what good people actually is?
Yes. So good people is a community where people come to share new experiences, learn new things, and make new friends. And whether that's through our community or our 3-month-long cohorts, it's just like a space to meet like-minded people and really have a structure where you can make meaningful connections, not just a Slack group where there's 10,000 other people who are maybe women in tech or who like plants or who drink tea or whatever it is, where it's just like, cool, I guess we have something in common, but how do I actually find the people I resonate with here? What do I do to meet them? You have one-off mingles. Like, cool, I'll meet one person, I won't see them again. And so we really wanted to create a structure that allowed for building and deepening relationships. And that's kind of what good people's for.
Yeah. And do you use the like personalization test or whatever from HelloIris? Do you still use that in this, or have you? No.
No. Yeah, I think I don't know if that's necessarily. I guess it's like, I think as far as I go with that personality test, I think it's a good way, for example, like if you want to know about somebody else and be like, oh, it's such a fast way to kind of get a sense of, kind of like a psychometric test or something like that. But at least in the experience that I found with the groups and like with kind of giving people the meditations, people kind of, it's like people only see or hear what they already know. They can only learn what they already know. So it feels like when we gave them that write up, but those were things that they hadn't thought about yet, or they weren't at that part in their experience yet. It just felt like it goes over their head, right? And so, whereas when you're in the groups and you're just kind of, going through things at your own pace and like discovering things at your own pace, and like somebody says something and it resonates with you in that moment and it gets you thinking about something else, it's much more kind of organic. At least in that way, I found it helps people kind of do that inner work more meaningful.
And I think what Nina was saying too, that, we found making matches based on personality really wasn't solving the problem. But when you bring people together who are curious and have the same questions and want to go a little bit deeper, like that's, in our experience in all the cohorts that we run, that's been enough to make a really solid group.
So how do you pick, so do you apply to join the cohort? Are you running one cohort at a time, or are you running several ones depending on? Okay, so the same one, yeah. So you apply to see if this is something that would be for you.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know if you want to speak to the application process, but I think it's pretty, like the application is to just join the community, not necessarily join a particular cohort. And it's just a pretty informal vibe check just to see like, hey, are you the kind of person, like one, are you looking for the kinds of things?
Okay, yeah, gotcha.
And then two, are you the kind of person who shares those same values that bring this community together?
Gotcha. And I find that it's kind of like you've gone back to, like you built all this cool technology and then you went back to like old school community society. And it feels a little bit like maybe that will be more like demand for that post-COVID as well. Like, how do you see, like, I know that, like, I don't know how, if it's the case in all of the world, but I know that, for example, in Sweden, that's been talking about like loneliness epidemic, like where the Stockholm is like the single per capita, like we have the most singles or something like that. It's not fact checked, so I might be wrong, but something like that. But anyways, so yeah, I mean, what do you think? Like post-COVID, like will we see more of this? Like people like have felt lonely before and have felt even lonelier during COVID, and like now demanding other things, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think for us, the shift away from technology was definitely related to COVID in the sense that everybody's at home, everybody's already like, this week you have an 80% increase in screen time. You've been on your phone for 14 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're building another app and all the
Mm.
goals we have with it of self-discovery and become your best self. Like, cool, that's great, but that's still you staying in your home by yourself, listening to this app. And so we thought like human connection is probably a lot more important to people right now than kind of this solo self-development work. And so can we sort of play more in that field? And I think everything that I've seen in terms of other companies and other communities, I think a lot of people are looking for more kind of personal connection. And community starting to become such a buzzword and such a thing that people are like, who is my community? And what is the community around this brand? What is the community around this product? And so I think that's something that will continue to grow over the coming years, especially, I'm guessing, once COVID lifts. And even though we're fully digital right now and everything's over Zoom and over Discord, which is where we did, like, we'd love to do in-person things once the world opens up.
Yeah. Nice. So I think also an interesting thing is that both of you have started in being actors. So as so from both of you have been acting and then you've gone into technology. What have you managed to take from that early career into this? I assume that there might be some, interesting experiences there that you've managed to bring with you.
So I wasn't an actor. I was a writer director. So I was.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Nina was acting, but we didn't know each other. We were kind of yeah. I don't know, Nina, if you want to talk a little bit about acting for you.
I think for me, the biggest thing about acting and film in general was it was this really cool sense of you get to work with this bunch of people who all bring this very specific skill set. Like you have a director, you have a writer, you have your wardrobe people, you have your set construction, just 100 different jobs. And you're all coming together to create something which absolutely, it's a blank canvas. Somebody has to write it, somebody has to imagine it, somebody has to cast it. And just at the end of this, however many long weeks or months period, you go from having absolutely nothing to having this full created product that you kind of put out into the world. And it takes a lot of creativity and problem solving and long hours and just really leaning on other people. And so for me, I felt that experience, I don't know, I tried to find that in film. I didn't quite. I tried to find it in startups. And I think that's what's translated outside of the idea of relationships. I think that's what's translated throughout both of our careers is this, how do you create something? Who are the people you create with? How can you put it together? And so I think that's been one really cool connection, even though they seem like very different fields.
And I assume storytelling is something that both of you have. Yeah.
It's really interesting. Kind of what Nina said, hit the nail on the head exactly in terms of what because I also have experience in film and then startups and then blockchain and then startups again. And I think it's just these kind of hyper passionate communities that care about understanding the world and creating something and changing the world. This, and I felt that level of passion, it was just something that was so important to me. And I felt those were the communities where you felt people were passionate about what they're doing. It wasn't about clocking in 9 to 5 or whatever. But yeah, and another, exactly what you said, this idea that all these people with different skill sets come together. And so you also, it's not we're 7 accountants and we're all working together. I picked the most boring thing, but whatever. We're 7 writers and we're working on writing. It was just this person brings visual elements. This person brings wardrobe. This is an actor. And it kind of became as a writer, it was really cool to see, you just write something in your own head and you have imaginations, and just to see that come to life and it becomes more than what you were, if that makes sense. Because other people put their own elements into it and what it ends up being is just way beyond that. But I found the problem with a lot of those communities was people just were so hyper obsessed just about that, where it was when you're in film, you eat, breathe, sleep, film, you're in the festival circuit, you're just watching movies all the time, all your other friends are filmmakers or actors or whatever, and this is just your life. Same thing with startups, same thing with blockchains. And it felt like you were just in this like bubble where that kind of diversity that I was actually craving when I went into those communities was actually what I ended up feeling like it was missing, and it felt pretty stifling eventually. But yeah, I think what we're building with good people is just really trying to hit that point of like, where do you find those people who are excited or passionate and different, and they can come together to solve problems or discuss or create things, but it doesn't feel like you're all of the same type and you're just doing this one thing forever.
Yeah. Nice. How would you define a community?
I think it's a really good question. I don't know if there's just one definition for me. I feel like you can have different communities that bring different things to your life. And I even feel like, I have my neighborhood, which is a community. Maybe I don't know everybody super well there. Maybe we don't I don't know, maybe we're not super close, but still I meet people when I see them. They know my name. They know my dog's name. I know their kids' names. Like, it's this kind of, maybe that's what it is for me. It's like a continued series of interactions that are, I don't know, they can be just passing, they can be super meaningful and deep, but it's the sense of continuity and having the same people in your life.
And I guess, were you asking what community in general means, or what our community is? I
was asking like your, like how in your head, how you define a community.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad I let Nina answer that one. Well, our community is full of awesome people.
No, more for the listeners, like who maybe not be as well like into the community world, if that makes sense. I mean, everyone maybe everyone has been part of a community, but maybe don't reflect about too much what it is. That's what I mean. But so, I mean, to round off some future gazing, like you are now busy with this to launch Good People. Like any thoughts you want to share in terms of the future, where you hope this is going?
Yeah, I'm really excited by the future where Good People is kind of the brand that people think of when they move to a new city or they move to a new neighborhood or they just want to meet cool people. And it's sort of like, I don't know, maybe the original goal behind meetups or kind of these events where it's like, I can just go to a meetup and I'll meet other cool people who also love, I don't know, pottery, or who love archery or whatever it is, like chemistry, I don't know. But then you end up going and it's just a bunch of very diverse people that have all come for their own reasons, that don't feel related to you, that you can't really connect with. And that just feels like I'm not getting what I want out of this at all. And so I would love for Good People to be a place where, like, I know it's people roughly around my age with roughly the same kind of curiosity, the same sense of open-mindedness. I know it's like in every major city in the world, and I know that I can turn to it when I need to find a close group of people I actually relate to.
Nice. I want to join a cohort myself.
Well, welcome.
Nice. Thank you so much for joining today. It's been great to talk to you two, and I really like what you do, and I can really relate to all of this myself. It's
thanks so much for having us, Maria. This was really cool to be on your show.
Yeah, thanks for letting us share more about what we're building and what we're excited about with communities and connection.
Yeah.
That's it for today. Thank you all for listening. I really appreciate it. And if you want to read up more about the guest, then you can go to the show notes to get all of the links. And also, if you like this episode, please don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter to never miss the latest episode. Thank you for today. See you in the next episode.